to the Bean Ninjas podcast, where you get an all-access pass to see what happens behind the closed doors of a fast-growing global bookkeeping and financial reporting business.
Hey, welcome to the Bean Ninjas podcast. This is Anthony Chanstermove, the learning and community lead here at Bean Ninjas. And I've got with me today Matt Wolfe from a couple of things. evergreenprofits.com, which is the business arm of the business, and also the Hustle and Flowchart Podcast, which is actually how I discovered Matt and his business partner Joe and co-host Joe. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff.
We're going to definitely geek out all things marketing, because that's kind of the world that we live in. But also more about that. I'm all about finding out the human behind the marketer. And so I can see a bookshelf of knowledge behind you. So at some point, I'd like to dig into that with you.
Sure.
But can you just share with our audience sort of how you're doing, first of all, and where are you recording from today?
So I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, right now it's my 2 p.m, and I'm recording from San Diego, California, in the U.S. Yeah, I mean, things are going good right now. Love talking about marketing and nerding out about this kind of stuff. So that always puts me in a good mood.
Amazing. Okay, so today you're going to share your tips on how to sell online products through content and affiliate marketing. We'll definitely dive into something that you guys like to do a lot, which is repurposing content as well. And I think there's just that whole, I mean, that's major. Like, we could go on for hours about that. So I'm going to have to do my best to try and consolidate and bring it down. Before we go into the tech stuff, let's talk about I'm curious, whatever happened to your childhood dream of becoming a jet pilot or becoming an NBA player and a professional basketball player? Did you ever pursue any of those?
The jet pilot was like a real young kid thing, right? So I wanted to be when I was like, 7 or 8 years old, I used to go and watch, we have air shows here where you can go and watch the military jets fly around. And there was a real popular one called the Blue Angels here. I don't know how people, how familiar people are outside of the U.S. with the Blue Angels, but it's like an aerial acrobatic jet show. And my parents used to take me there. San Diego is a big military town. So I used to see the jets flying around San Diego all the time. And when I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be up in one of those jets. But as I got older, well, first of all, it's not great to be tall and fly jets. And I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'3". So, that sort of kind of rules me out in the first place. But second of all, I was never really that inclined to be to be in the military, I guess. That wasn't really something that I had much of a calling to do. I just wanted to fly jets, and apparently they don't let you just fly jets if you're not in the military. So that didn't really stick. The basketball thing I did try to pursue. I played basketball when I was in elementary school and then middle school, and then I played basketball in high school, and then about halfway through high school, I kind of got into skateboarding and video games and other stuff, and I just kind of stopped practicing basketball as much, and that kind of fell away a bit.
I feel similar story. Like, I played basketball throughout high school, and then no dreams of getting into NBA. I don't think there's, well, now there are Aussies in there, but there weren't when I was in school. And also Asians are quite hard, and I'm not as tall as you. I'm 6'1". Ended up getting into Counter-Strike, and that kind of took me away from the game.
That's what I did in high school too. I was obsessed with Counter-Strike, and I think StarCraft were my 2 games.
Yes. Food Wars, baby. Love it. So, okay, well, and now you also, I've seen photos of you, and you've got your daughter on Facebook. Tell me, what's the best part for you about being a daddy?
I mean, I have 2 kids now. I have a daughter. My daughter's 7 and my son's 5. And it's, right now, as I'm saying this, I actually hear my kids fighting in the background. So, that's the not so great parts. But, I love just seeing them experience new things for the first time. Like, that is just the best feeling in the world when you go on a trip or something and you show them some awe-inspiring scenery and they're just as in awe by it as you are. Or, my favorite thing lately is my kids have both gotten really into Legos. So we'll go and build cool stuff together with Legos, and that's been really fun. And my son, he's really into doing puzzles. And I'm kind of a nerd for puzzles, just, jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
And so him and I will build puzzles together. And, it's just fun to find these common hobbies that you can do with your kids in your free time. And that's really what I love doing these days.
That's amazing. And I love that parallel between doing puzzles and business or marketing. Like, it's about finding all the pieces and how do they fit. And, so I can see that.
And a big key to it is just patience as well. As you're doing puzzles, you want it to go faster, and you can kind of see how everything goes together, but you don't exactly know how to make them all fit together yet. And there's a lot of great parallels there, but I think the one thing that it almost becomes kind of meditative and helps me with the focus, the focus and the impatience and that kind of thing. Doing puzzles, you can only go at the pace that you can go. So
absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the word focus, because we started off before we jumped on the call about this, your theme for the year, and that is focus. And tell us about when it comes to, this topic of selling online products, right? And whether you're doing content marketing, affiliate marketing, all of those things, how important is focus, and how easy there's so much you can do. And I get this all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, am I doing podcasts? Am I doing guest posting? Am I doing Facebook ads, Google ads, the whole kit and caboodle? How have you and being able to sort of narrow down on these are the 4 or 5 or 3 things that we're going to do in 2020?
Yeah, well, it kind of feels like our business. So we've been doing this stuff since, I started an online business in 2005, doing sort of freelance web design. Joe and I partnered together in 2007. I quit my job in 2009. Joe and I started our first podcast in 2010. So we've been doing this for, 15 years now? And over the last 15 years, it's just been this constant expansion and then contraction. Like we find new ideas and we add stuff to the business, and we add stuff to the business, we add stuff to the business. At the end of the year, we always go, man, we're doing too much. And then we sort of contract and bring it all back. And then we start, bringing things out of the business. And it seems to be this process that we just kind of do every year. And to say that it won't happen again, that's really hard to say. I have a feeling what'll end up happening is we'll probably get this focus and we'll add more stuff, and then we'll sort of contract a bit and bring some stuff, cut some stuff out. But the way we really have figured it out is I'm a data nerd. I just love digging into the stats. So for me, what we did at the end of December 2019, beginning of January 2020, we sort of did a big audit on all of our numbers. We looked at where are we spending all of our time. We literally kept logs. I wish I had one on my desk. I don't have it anymore, but we literally kept logs of minute by minute, like what we were doing throughout the day. It was actually in 30-minute blocks. And in each 30 minutes, we'd write down what we did in the last 30 minutes. And we did that exercise for 6 weeks to figure out what were we spending all of our time on. And then we also looked at all the data. We looked at all of the numbers and tried to figure out where all of our revenue was coming from. Was it coming from our affiliate marketing efforts? If it was, which products was generating the most amount of revenue? Was it coming from our course sales? We had some agency stuff we were doing for a little bit. We have sponsorships that we do with our podcast. We have our newsletter. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing. So we were just looking at the numbers and figuring out, okay, where is the money coming in from? And, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, it holds true. We found out that 80% of our income was coming from 20% of the time of the effort that we were putting in. And where all that income was coming from for us was the affiliate marketing stuff. But where we were spending all of our time was, managing customers who bought our courses and managing agency clients and all of the back and forth involved with all of those kinds of things is where all of our time was being spent. But our money was coming from all of this affiliate marketing stuff that we kind of set up once and let it do its thing, and then we'll add another piece of content in and let it do its thing. So that was really how we came to the conclusion of let's just hone in. So the podcast stays because we just love it. We just love talking to people. We love learning. We love exploring new ideas. We love the networking aspect of it, getting to know other people. So that stuck for those reasons. And then the affiliate marketing stuff stuck because of just our ability to dig into the data and figure out what's working and where our time is going.
Yeah, I really like that. And becoming a data-driven organization is kind of like we've been going through that journey. We've been ninjas as well. We're heading into our 5th year now. And especially with marketing, because it can get really, when you start out, it's really easy to just, let's throw a few $100 or a few $1,000 here and you're doing all these things. And if you don't have and that's the biggest complaint I'm sure you hear. It's like, what's the ROI? Like if I do LinkedIn Live for the next 12 months, what's the ROI? And like, well, if you don't have the data to back up, it's very hard to determine what's working and what's not working. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to sort of speak into that a little bit, when it comes to things like Facebook Lives and, LinkedIn videos and posting on Instagram and all that kind of stuff, some of that stuff is very, very difficult to quantify. It's very difficult to go, okay, by doing this, I'm getting these results. And so I think with a lot of that kind of stuff, you just need to look at the sort of aggregate results of all of it together. If we're going and posting on Instagram daily with new videos, how are our podcast numbers growing? How are our newsletter subscribers growing? You got to look for correlations versus, direct response data. So a lot of the social media stuff, that's all we're really doing is we're just trying to find correlations. When we're more active in our Facebook group, how does it impact our newsletter sales? How does it impact affiliate revenue? How does it impact our podcast growth? All of that kind of stuff. So a lot of what we're doing in the kind of like doing things that don't scale is we're just looking for correlations. And if we can find correlations of, wow, this seems to be moving the needle, then we'll kind of lean into it, do more of it, and see if it moves the needle more to kind of prove our theories. So it's kind of a very scientific method, data-based approach, even with the things that don't scale.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. So can you take us a bit behind the scenes for the data geeks listening to this? So what are you using for a dashboard? Do you have some like out of the box tools, or have you developed your own thing? Are you using Google Dashboard? Like what are you actually doing to actually get that data from different channels that you're out there and putting it all together and having sort of a place to look at and go, okay, let's make some decisions around this based on what we're seeing?
Yeah, so our biggest, the tool that we use the most is actually a tool called Improvely. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we use Improvely to sort of track the attribution of what's working. It'll give you basically a special link for when you're running a Facebook ad or a Google ad or any of those kind of things. Or even when we mail our list, we'll use UTM codes in our emails inside of the URLs that we're using. And then Improvely will track the effectiveness of those URLs regardless of where you sent it from. And it'll also give you the attribution data of, okay, this person clicked on your Google ad. And then after they clicked on your Google ad, they saw your Facebook ad, and then they clicked your Facebook ad, and then they bought. I can see that whole customer journey inside of Improvely. So we've been using that to kind of get the more direct response data. And then when it comes to the more correlation kind of data about the Facebook groups and the Instagram and all that kind of stuff, most of that data, we're just making our own spreadsheets. Like we're, once a month or so, I'll go and see, okay, how has our Instagram growth looked? How much have we posted? What sort of, social metrics are on these posts? Okay, can I find a correlation between the growth in Instagram stuff and the growth in our download numbers on our podcast? And I'm just trying to look at the data and see if I could find correlations. I wish there was a better tool or a better answer for how to figure that out. But quite honestly, I just live in Google Sheets.
Yeah, that's pretty common. And there are much more expensive product sets out there, but I think do what works. And I like that you can go back to simple like UTM tags and things like that, which is what we're doing as well. All right, cool. So you mentioned podcasts. So let's talk about just, where are you at? I remember reading a while ago, you were at 100,000 downloads. Are you still there? Are you climbing? Where are you at? Like in the last?
So right now we're getting about 50,000 downloads a month. And I think our overall download numbers since we've started, I think we're approaching 500,000 downloads total. We're hoping to, if we keep on pace, we shouldn't have an issue passing 1 million downloads this year. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Is our average month is about 50,000 downloads.
Amazing. And you've been going for how long? 4 years?
So this specific show where Joe and I are co-hosting it, we started this one in January of 2017. So we just passed the 3-year threshold last month.
Right. Cool. So for those listening right now and going, how did you do that? How did you go from zero, right? Just launched on iTunes or Apple Podcasts to getting even the first 10,000 downloads or first 1,000 downloads? Like what have you learned over the years in terms of growing listenership, getting the subscribers, but also like what's the goal for you guys with the podcast? I mean, it's not just about we just want 1 million downloads. Like I assume that's not just the metric. It's actually fueling a lot of things that are happening, like you say, with your products and opportunities.
Yeah. So the first part of that question, how we grow the podcast. Let me first qualify with the fact, or disclaim with the fact that we did have a bit of an audience before we launched this podcast. So we did have a mailing list that was, in the tens of thousands of subscribers. So when we launched this podcast, we were able to go to our mailing list and say, hey, here's the new show, and kind of jump it up the rankings pretty quickly. Saying that, when we started our first podcast back in 2010, we didn't have that. We nobody knew who we were. We didn't have a list. We had nothing really no way to grow it. So the number one recommendation that I give people to try to grow a show is to just go get on other people's shows. So when you start your own podcast, the absolute best way to grow your podcast is to be on other podcasts, because people that are tuning in those podcasts, well, we know they like podcasts. And if you entertain them and you educate them and they like what you had to say on that podcast, there's a pretty good chance they're going to jump over and, check out a couple of your episodes and then ideally subscribe. So that is the absolute number one way to grow a podcast, is just get on as many podcasts as you can. Don't worry about the size of the podcast. Like, one question I've never asked, and nobody's really even ever asked us, is how big is your podcast? How many downloads do you get? I don't even care. It doesn't matter to me. I love talking to people. I love sharing information. And even if a podcast right now only gets 100 downloads a month, who's to say that a year from now it won't be a huge podcast that's getting 100,000 downloads a month, and you're right in there in that feed, and people will still be discovering you. So doesn't matter to me how big a podcast is. Just, get on more of them. So that's kind of my number one tip. Number two would be this is sort of more for a show that has guests, but ask your guests to share. Bring on guests that have audiences and get them to share. And in the beginning, you may only be able to get people on that have smaller audiences. Maybe they've got a social media following of 1,000 people or something. That's a start. That's going to get you your first download. So bring people on that you can interview, and then ask the people that you interviewed to share the interview with your audience. And that's another way to kind of get things kickstarted. Then over time, you get bigger and bigger and bigger guests who have bigger and bigger audiences, and that sort of sharing element of it gets easier and easier. So that's number two. And then, other than like those kinds of things, sharing on social media, mailing your list if you've got it, leveraging the audience that you already have if you've got it, and going and being on other podcasts, we do some like growth hacky kind of stuff. Like, we'll buy advertising to our podcast. We'll buy Facebook ads to the podcast and Google ads to the podcast. You can actually buy advertising in some of the podcast player apps. So there's apps like Overcast and Castro, and another one's Podcast Republic. And there's a handful of them that you can actually go straight to the app creator and ask them if there's some way to promote your podcast within their platform. And most of them have some sort of paid method to promote your podcast and get more awareness on it inside of their app. So we do a lot of things like that.
So with those ones, do you record the audio for that, or did they do that for you?
It's not audio. So the apps will have like a little like image ad. Right. So Overcast, for example, when you open that app to listen to a podcast, let's say you click on a podcast that's like a business podcast. Let's say you're listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast on Overcast. Well, while you're on Overcast, in the very bottom, like, maybe 1/5 of the screen, there'll be actually a little banner with like a little 1-sentence piece of ad copy. So you can write less than a tweet. It's maybe like 100 characters. And then it automatically pulls in the image from your podcast. And so you have to write about 100 characters of copy, and that's about it.
Challenge right there, but test your copywriting skills. Really cool. Okay, so I'm going to go from that's a distribution channel. So we're talking about podcasts to, let's go back to the start of this topic, which is, okay, you've got an online product, right? So I know you guys have a couple of courses, perpetual audience growth. You've got the affiliate promotion engine. You're also selling other people's products as affiliates for them. So someone's listening to this and they're going, okay, I'm just about to launch an online course, or maybe I've already launched it. How do I use content to drive sales for that particular product, Matt?
Yeah. So a lot of the courses that we actually sell right now, we're actually phasing out. We were talking about the whole focus element. So a lot of these courses we're actually not going to be selling for too much longer. They're still available, but a lot of those are going to go away. But the way that we sell those courses and affiliate offers through content, there's multiple ways we do it. So the first and foremost is the podcast. The podcast is our content marketing strategy. So we will bring on product creators, and we'll interview the product creators about their product, and then we'll use that as a piece of content to promote as an affiliate. We'll talk about their product and mention a link on the show, and then in the show notes of the episode, we'll put a link over to that affiliate link. So we'll do that kind of thing. We do the same thing with our courses. Joe and I do what we call therapy session episodes. A therapy session episode just means we don't have a guest. It's just me and Joe chatting together about whatever's on our mind in the moment. And a lot of times in that, we'll talk about some of the courses that we have available and sort of direct people to go grab our courses. So that's how the sort of affiliate promotion engine and some of those kinds of things come into play. Other than that, we like to write blog posts too. We'll do written blog posts about some of the products. We'll write product reviews. We'll write tutorials on how to use various products. We'll write comparisons that compare to products that are very similar. Really that's what we're doing with our content marketing. It's the podcast, the written content that usually includes some affiliate links. Now we're actually starting to get into video stuff. Funny enough, doing it for as long as we have, we've never really put a focus on making video stuff in our business. So we've actually started doing the interviews on camera now for our podcast. So we have video footage. We're actually starting up a brand new YouTube channel that we're actually going to take seriously instead of it just being a dumping ground for our videos that nobody's paying attention to. And so we're actually going to get more and more into video marketing, and the same concepts apply. We're going to have tutorials and reviews and case studies and things like that in video form, which ideally will encourage people to purchase the products through our links.
Are you working with some specialist in video marketing, or how are you sort of getting that strategy together?
Yeah, so as far as like the content of the videos, we're not really working with a specialist. We've just kind of accumulated information and ideas and tips from people just from being on our podcast. I mean, we've had probably 15 YouTube experts on the podcast over the years. So we've just sort of soaked up the knowledge about what should go into the videos from those people. As far as the actual posting strategy and the frequency and the sort of like targeting and keywords that you use and descriptions and titles and all that kind of stuff, we do actually have some people that we're working with. Their names are actually Aaron Biblo and Tristan. He's going to kill me. I forgot his last name. But we actually did a podcast episode with these guys. They taught us their YouTube strategy. And after they taught us their YouTube strategy, one of the guys actually came out to San Diego and was here for like 2 months straight. And so we actually went and met with him for lunch 2 or 3 times. And he mapped out an entire YouTube strategy for us.
Love how that works. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing these videos that you guys are going to be throwing up soon. Now, you're like I said earlier, you guys are masters at repurposing content. So can you just take us through for the listeners here who are producing? Let's start with podcasts because that's like your number one sort of thing that you're doing. How do you repurpose the content? So you record it, you publish it, and then what do you do?
Yeah, so with our podcast, we do something very unique. I'm not sure. I know of only one other podcaster that's doing this right now, and they were actually a client of ours when we were doing this for them as an agency. So we actually repurpose our podcast into a printed newsletter. So every single episode that we record, we actually have a note taker who works for us, who listens to the whole episode, and she actually just takes notes on the whole thing. And it's not like show notes that you see on a podcast page that kind of tease out what you're going to hear in the podcast. These are everything we talked about. Any sort of tactics that they broke down, we break them down in the notes. Any sort of tools or resources they mentioned, broken out in the notes. Their backstory, all of it, it's all in the notes. So anybody can kind of get this recap of everything we talked about in that episode. And then all those notes, they go into this newsletter that go out on a monthly basis to all of our monthly subscribers. And it's actually a physical print newsletter. You can actually open it and flip through it and highlight it and write in the margins and all that kind of stuff. So that's the first thing that we do to repurpose it. And that's actually one of our larger income streams in our business is the subscription revenue that comes from that newsletter. Now, the way we actually promote that newsletter is when you're listening to an episode of our podcast, we actually have a call to action that says, hey, we're taking notes on this episode. You can get those notes for free by going to this URL, and we'll tell them what URL to go get them. We also have like a text number that you can text in to get the notes as well. But we'll give them a call to action to go get the notes for this episode for free. But the notes for each episode are only available for free for 2 weeks. And then they get locked down into the members area where only the monthly members get access. And then you have to be a monthly member of this newsletter and of our subscription membership to get the new notes after 2 weeks. So they're free for 2 weeks, and then they get locked into the vault, and then you get them in the mail, and you can access them from inside the members area. So that's kind of the revenue stream off the podcast. That's probably the largest revenue stream from directly related to the podcast. And then beyond that, we have a second podcast called Hustle and Flowchart, which is a daily show. And so our podcast interviews are usually about an hour minimum. Sometimes they're upwards of 2 hours. And so we created Hustle and Flowchart to just take little nuggets of wisdom. They're like 10 to 15 minutes total and break them out into a daily show. So we actually have somebody on our team. His name's Jacob. He listens to all of these episodes and finds really interesting clips to pulls out little 7 to 15 minute clips, and then adds a little 2-minute intro to them. And he basically hosts the second podcast that we do. So that's another way that we're repurposing this podcast content. On top of that, we make like headliner videos. I'm sure you're familiar with headliner, where you take the video clips, and if you don't have video, it'll put a static image, but it'll have a little like waveform animation over the image. And we'll take little clips. They're usually the same clips that we're using for Hustle and Flowchart. We'll make a little video out of them, and we'll share those on Instagram, and we'll share them on LinkedIn. And we've tested sharing them on Facebook, but they don't really get much traction on Facebook. But we'll try to spread those little content pieces around, and then we'll also give our podcast guests access to that content. So the little meme images and the headliner video animations, we give links to our guests, so our guests could share those on their wall and further promote our podcast. So those are a handful of the probably the highest leverage repurposing things that we do.
Do you overlay that with PPC campaigns to kind of boost some of that content, or how do you? Yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, so the headliner videos, those style videos, I will put them on Facebook, and then I will advertise those videos to people that are in our ecosystem. So basically, I have and this is kind of getting into the weeds here a little bit, but I have an ad target inside of Facebook of anybody who's interacted with us in the last 30 days. So if you've commented on a Facebook post, watched one of our videos past 25%, visited one of our websites, purchased anything from us, interacted on our Instagram page, there's a whole bunch of criteria that all falls into this person's interacted with us in the last 30 days. And so that's a retargeting audience that we create. And then all of these assets that we're creating on the back of our podcast, we'll create Facebook ads, and then we'll show those ads to anybody that's in that audience. So once somebody's listened to our podcast once, or been to our Facebook page once, or watched one of our online videos just once, now all of a sudden on Facebook, you're kind of seeing us everywhere.
Yeah, and that's that whole "these guys are everywhere" strategy. I love it. I love it. Yeah, and it's working really well. I mean, it's funny because I'll be reading a blog post somewhere, and I'm like, I can see your podcast showing up, and I'm going, "What the? Okay, they're doing their jobs."
Yep, and we'll do it with Google Display Network ads and stuff like that too. That's probably what you're seeing on other people's blogs.
Now we're going to quickly just a little bit talk about affiliate promotion and how do you? What's your? I don't know what that is. The truck or something outside. But how do you? So you've got your products that you want to sell, whether it's your newsletter or you've got these courses. I know they're fading away, but when you're doing them, how do you then go to other potential partners and how do you get them to share some of your stuff around and like what's the arrangement? Is it a profit share? Is it just purely because we love each other and we want to share like good content? How do you make that work, or what are some ideas that our listeners can sort of action on?
Yeah, so with our product specifically, we've never actually made a drive to get affiliates to promote it. We do have some affiliates promoting it, but I think all of the affiliates that are promoting it sort of approached us and asked if they could, and so we opened up affiliates stuff for them. We had a handful of friends that are local here in San Diego that they asked us if they can promote, so we opened up the affiliate program for them. And then but it hasn't been a focus of ours to bring on affiliates for our own products. However, we do promote a lot of other people's products, so I do know from the perspective of being somebody who is an affiliate, what kind of things people are looking for.
Yeah, what's your criteria? How do you determine, these are the products that we want to put out to our audience, and these won't fly? Because I'm sure a lot of people might pitch you and say, well, I've got this cool software, or I've got this whatever. And how do you determine, well, yes or no?
Yeah. So with what we're doing, we really only promote, maybe 6 or 7 affiliate products at any given time. We're not trying to just spread ourselves very thin with a ton of products. We want to go deep on a handful of products that we really can get behind. So criteria number 1 is we've got to use it ourselves in our own business. If we're not using it, then we're not going to be able to talk intelligently of it. We're not going to be able to answer people's questions. We're not going to be able to tell you what we like about it, what we don't like about it. So we've got to use it ourselves. That's key number 1. Number 2, this rule we break fairly often, but we like to see it above a certain price threshold. We want to make at least, maybe $75 minimum commissions on it. Anything below that, it starts to get really difficult to do any sort of advertising campaigns behind it. And it just becomes less worth our time because we could put our focus on the ones that are going to pay us a lot higher dollar amount. So just the opportunity cost of the lower priced products make it difficult. But we do break that rule from time to time if we have a really good relationship with somebody. For example, we promote a tool called Designer a lot. We love it. We use it in our business a lot. We promote it because we're actually really good personal friends with the creator of it. He lives here in San Diego. We meet him for lunch once every 2 months. So that's part of the reason we're actually promoting that, even though it sort of falls below our threshold of what we'd be willing to promote. Other than that, it's just really got to be a tool we use. It's got to have a minimum threshold of price. And we've got to be able to create some depth behind the content. I mean, there's a handful of products out there that are just kind of like little features that there's not a whole lot you can talk about it. It does this one thing. It does this one thing well. And what else can we say about it? So, we like products that are multi-dimensional, that have a lot of features and functions and a lot of things that we can talk about around it. But other than that, it's really a relationship game. It's really people approach us if we get to know them and we get to like, and we like them and we enjoy the product that they offer. There's a good chance that we'll work something out and promote them. But yeah, for the most part, it's really all about the just the networking and the getting to know people, which circles all the way back around to why do we do this podcast, which I don't think I ever actually answered when you asked that. But it's, the main reason we started the podcast and the reason that we're so passionate about it now is the sort of automated networking element of it. We just get to meet new people constantly.
Yeah, no, that's can't say enough about that. Like, I think it's like this. Like, you're in San Diego, I'm in Sydney. Like, how often are we going to get a chance to hang out? And so it's really really powerful in that way. And if you really be considerate and thoughtful about who you want to connect with, it's not like I want to bring everyone onto the podcast. It's like, well, who do I want to learn from, or who can get value from what I'm sharing as well. So it's really that collaboration effort, right? And really like that. Yeah. Okay, we're going to just, a question that we like to ask a lot, I guess, is like, what's your go-to process or practice or maybe a tool for being productive and effectively managing your time and energy?
Yeah, I've got a handful of tools for that. So there's a tool called OmniFocus that I use a lot. And I don't know if you're familiar with Getting Things Done by David Allen, but that sort of process of unloading your brain of everything that you think you might have to do into one tool. And then once a week going through and looking at all this stuff that you unloaded and then prioritizing it to like, let's do it this week, let's do it next week, let's do it the following week. But I follow the GTD philosophy from David Allen. And OmniFocus is a tool for Mac. I don't know if it's on PC or not, but it's a tool for Mac that basically is designed to do the GTD practice. Right. So I use that like crazy. All of my recurring tasks on a daily basis, they pop up in that. It's, there's a little list of here's what you need to do today. And I have some things that are recurring, some things that I just kind of brain dumped a week earlier, but I moved it to today to get done. And that's really my sort of like task management. Here's what I need to do today. Other than that, I think, we use a Google Sheet that I turned into a calendar. I actually posted about it on Facebook today. I think you even commented on it. But, so we use Google Sheets for a lot of that kind of stuff. The Google Sheet actually shows what podcast came out today, any videos we released today, what email we're mailing to our list today, what we're posting on social media today. And it's all on just like a big calendar that shows everything that needs to get done this month. And the reason we do it that way is it allows us to get out in front of stuff. So we know 3 weeks from now, we have a promotion around ThriveCart that we're going to be doing, and it's already on our calendar. We can already see it. We already know what videos we need to make for that. And so we're going to make those videos tomorrow, even though that promotion isn't happening for 2 weeks, because next week I'm going to be in Florida, and the following week I need those videos ready because the promotion has started. So that calendar gives us the ability to look ahead at what promotions we're going to do as an affiliate, what promotions we're going to do for our podcast, any sort of promotions that we're going to do. We're always about 6 weeks ahead of what we're going to be focused on, so that there's no surprises. And if there's travel or things come up, we're ahead of it. It's queued up, it's scheduled, we're ready to go. We don't have to think about it. And that also gives us a lot of freedom too. If we want to go and take a week away from the computer and not do anything in our business, I could spend the week prior making sure all of our assets are ready for what's coming up next week on our content promotional calendar.
Yeah, I really like your focus on assets and really just going, okay, well, what's the thing that we're going to promote that's going to generate the revenue? What's the assets that need to be built for that? And then let's build it and let's map it out and do that. And I like that you simplify it down to it just needs to be a Google Sheet. You don't need to have complicated software to do all this. And now you and Joe live in different cities, am I right?
No, Joe actually lives about 5 minutes from me.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was going to say, well, you're working from home and he does that too. So in a way, you are still a remote company. Like you're not sitting in an office together.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you keep the communication lines open and, as things come up and you need to...
So we're in Slack all day. I got a second monitor over to the side over here. And on my second monitor, I actually have Slack open and I have OmniFocus open. So I can see, here's the things I need to get done today. And here's the communication with the team. So the team is me, Joe. We have an operations manager, Shannon. We have our head of our podcasting, Jacob. He's the one who does all the audio editing and does a lot of the show notes and a lot of the setup for the podcast. Then we have 2 note takers, Sue and Kate. And then we have a bookkeeper. So all of these people live in Slack. So pretty much any sort of communication that needs to happen with the team is all over here in Slack all day long. I usually have my notifications turned off, so it's not just bloop, bloop, bloop all day long. But, once or twice a day, I'll go, okay, is there anything that I need to be, anything they need me for? And I'll just kind of look over at my Slack screen and see if there's anything that needs to happen. And then, Joe and I are kind of throwing ideas back and forth to each other in Slack all day long. Like I'll build a new landing page and I'll send him a link. I'll be like, hey, what's your feedback on this? And he'll go and make a video in ScreenFlow or something. And he'll send me the video and be like, hey, give me your feedback on this. And so we're kind of sending stuff back and forth to each other all day long. But, for the most part, that promotional calendar that I showed you, and Joe also uses OmniFocus. So we kind of both know what we need to be doing every day. It's not super necessary for us to be communicating constantly. Really, our only communications are every Monday. Joe and I have a pretty long call, oftentimes going 4 hours long, where we're kind of planning out the week. What assets do we need to build this week? What videos do we need to make? What content do we need to write? What emails need to happen? We're kind of just discussing all that stuff. We're discussing bigger picture stuff. We're discussing opportunities that are on our plate. Probably doing a little bit of BSing that doesn't have anything to do with business. But we spend a long time every Monday in these really, really in-depth conversations. And then every Tuesday we have a 1-hour team meeting where we kind of get the team on the same page of everything that we talked about the prior day. And other than that, we don't really need to stay in touch. We kind of have our marching orders and we just do what we got to do.
Make it happen. Yeah. Do you have, are you using anything like an Asana or anything like that for the team? Or is it just all...
Our operations manager does. She uses Podio, I believe, but Joe and I aren't in Podio, so she works with our other team members inside of Podio. But she's actually flat out asked us to just stay out of that, because she wants us to be kind of focused on the high level, bigger picture stuff. She doesn't want us to be, in the weeds of the day to day, what needs to happen from all these other team members. So we do have a project management system. I couldn't even tell you how it's laid out. Shannon built it all. Shannon runs it. Shannon trained the team on how to use it. And Joe and I, we just hear from Shannon once a week about how things are going.
Beautiful. I love it. I love the management structure and how you've got that team working. I mean, I'm sure it took you some time to build that. But once you've got it clicking, it's amazing. So you mentioned bookkeeping and being that we are an online bookkeeping company, I'd have to ask you some financial questions now. So what tool are you using for your bookkeeping or your accounting?
So for Evergreen Profits, we're actually still on QuickBooks Online for that. But Joe and I actually each have our own individual businesses as well. So like the structure of our business is there's Evergreen Profits, and then Evergreen Profits pays my business and Joe's business, and it kind of like trickles down that way. So for my business personally, I'm using Xero, and I think Joe's using QuickBooks Online. So Evergreen Profits is QuickBooks Online. My business, which is Mach 4 LLC, which is the initials of me, my wife, and both my kids. Matt, Alana, Cora, Hollis, Mach, MACH.
Amazing.
So Mach 4 is my business, and that's all on Xero. And after using Xero from QuickBooks, I wouldn't go back. I love Xero.
I'm going to use that. Don't tell Joe, but you're my favorite now. Okay, so what does financial freedom mean to you? And this, I really want your perspective, because you guys focus on generating affiliate income, which to some degree is passive. So what does financial freedom, financial independence mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. So financial freedom, financial independence to me, really, when I think of that, I just think of feeling completely secure. Like any sort of expenses that might pop up, I know I've got it covered. I've got 6 months to a year of leeway in my bank account. So if a water pipe bursts in my house, I know I've got the money to cover it. All of my bills are covered, and I can do what I want. For me, it's not really as much as I think most people claim that they actually need. I think when you actually reverse engineer the numbers of how much you need to be financially free, it's really nowhere near where most people think they need it to be. I think, for Joe and I, if we're making $10,000 a month, we're financially free. Luckily, we've gotten to the point where we're able to generate more than that and reinvest it back into the business. But, for me, it's just I want to be able to make sure all the bills are paid. I've got a nice runway for if anything pops up unexpectedly, and I've got the money available to me to go on trips and to get whatever I need on a day-to-day basis. That's really all I'm striving for when it comes to finances.
Yeah, great answer. And I agree with that. Did you grow up in a family that you always spoke about money all the time, or was that more like I didn't? Like for me, my parents were just culturally was like, don't talk about money to your kids. So I don't know, for you, how did you learn your financial literacy skills and reading numbers and these sort of things?
Yeah, so I grew up in sort of an entrepreneurial family. My parents actually owned a business when I was in high school. So our family kind of had a rags to riches to rags again story. So, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we lived in a very, very small house in one of the less affluent parts of San Diego. I think everybody thinks of San Diego and they think, okay, everybody in San Diego is wealthy and it's like, really, really expensive to live there. And it is, but there is some parts of San Diego that you probably don't really want to go to at night if you don't really know your way around. And we grew up in kind of one of those towns. We grew up in a very small house in not a very expensive neighborhood. And my parents didn't have a lot of money when I was young. When I was in high school, the company that they both worked for, they both worked at the same company when I was a kid. The company actually went out of business and went under. And so they had to figure out quickly, okay, crap, what are we going to do? How are we going to pay the bills? And so they started their own business. They started a shutter company. And so this was like my freshman year in high school. So I don't know, it's 14 or 15 or somewhere around there. And so I actually came in and started working for their company when I was still in high school. That was my first job, was working at their company after school. And so I actually started to learn the business world and that kind of thing at a fairly early age, in my early teens. And over time, by the time I was like 20, I was the operations manager of that company. And I also did all of the bookkeeping, and I did all of the financial management and all of the payroll and all of that kind of stuff. That was the role that fell on me. And so that's when I actually got really, really proficient with spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff. That business, unfortunately, eventually, when the economy took a turn in 2008, people stopped buying houses, which means they stopped buying shutters. And then that company took a dive and eventually went under as well. And and then our family had struggle again, and I left that company and before it went under, and I started my own business. And so, there's a lot of various elements and storyline there that have shaped how I think about finances and how I think about business. But, growing up, there was, I think my parents leveraged a lot of debt. And I think some of those bad habits stuck with me afterwards. And I got myself into some debt trouble that I've had to get myself unburied from. And, but it's an interesting story. It's actually something I haven't reflected on really at all until you just brought it up.
Well, I don't know, that's a good thing, but thank you for sharing. Like, I think and this is the kind of conversation we want to open up with entrepreneurs, because obviously we focus on financial literacy, and we're actually, we've got a Xero bookkeeping course specifically designed for business owners, so they can actually go through and learn how to do their bookkeeping, or give someone in a team to do it. But to really get an idea of, okay, what do the numbers mean, and where's the cash flow coming in this month? Where's it going? If I want to buy something or go to an event in San Diego in 6 months' time, can I afford it? Can I hire that team member? These sort of things. And I feel, you've been through a roller coaster, and I can tell, like your family and yourself, and you've been up and down. So you definitely had a roller coaster journey with entrepreneurship, with your families, businesses, and yourself. And so I guess, what's your, how do you stay sane when you've got kids to take care of, your wife, you've got other things going on? So how do you make sure how do you ride through what do you do to ride through those waves, because the waves are inevitable?
Yeah. So I have a handful of sort of daily practices that I keep up with that help. I wish I could say one of those daily practices was that I meditate every day. I try. I try to meditate, but I definitely fall out of the routine from time to time. But I love meditation. I think meditation is one of the most powerful things that you can do to just sort of calm your mind. Because if you can spend, 20 minutes a day in meditation, then when you have the sort of really hectic moments, when things are kind of freaking out, it just kind of feels easier to stay calm. And I can't really explain it. I don't know the science behind it. I don't claim to know the science behind it. I just know that in highly stressed situations, meditation helps you just kind of stay a little bit more even. So that's kind of one of them. Number two is I'm a big journaler. In fact, that chair right there, that was actually my wife's nursing chair for when she was nursing our kids. I moved it to my office. Now it's my journaling chair. The journal is literally sitting on the thing right there. So I journal every single day. I kind of unload my thoughts. I mentioned getting things done. It's sort of a process where if you know there's a lot you need to do, just dump it all. Unload your brain, all of it, whether you think you're going to do it or not, just unload it all. You can always delete it out of your whatever your getting things done system is later. Well, I do the same thing with journaling. Any sort of weird thoughts I have about the business or family or relationships or arguments I've been in or anything that's going on in my life, I journal about it. And just sort of unloading it from your brain helps calm the mind around those topics. So that's number two. And then number three is, earlier you were making a good point about how I'd kind of seen the ups and the downs of what business looks like. And I think the realization that the downs are never as bad as you think they're going to be, and the ups are never as great as you think they're going to be. So just be happy in wherever you are. That is such a huge key to business and to life, is to just focus on being happy and being fulfilled no matter what state you're in, financially or emotionally or in business. It doesn't matter. Try to figure out how to enjoy whatever it is you're doing while you're doing it, because that milestone that you're shooting for, it's probably not going to bring as much pleasure when you get to it as you believe. And that worst case scenario, oh man, I blew all my money on Facebook ads and lost it all. Well, that worst case scenario is probably not as bad as you think it's going to be either, right? You have communities to lean on. That is really what debt exists for. I'm not recommending you go get into debt, but it is there for a reason. It is a safety net if necessary, right? But just kind of thinking about what is the worst case scenario, what is the best case scenario, and then realizing that either extreme is probably not what you think it's going to be, and just enjoying the process and enjoying the moment. That's a huge key. And I think that's also a big piece of the sort of shift that Joe and I made over this year, is we kind of analyzed what stuff do we do on a daily basis that we actually enjoy doing, and how do we do more of that? Because at the end of the day, the goals that we're shooting for, they're always going to be a moving goalpost, right? If I'm shooting for $1 million a month in our business, and we finally get to $1 million a month in our business, well, next month we're shooting for 1.2 million, right? There's always a moving goalpost, and you never seem to enjoy the getting to the goal. The reward is never as good. So the key for me, and I think the key for Joe, is figuring out, how do I enjoy the journey even if I never make it to the outcome?
That's a very poignant and very powerful, because I know it seems to be a much Western way of thinking. Like, let's look at the goals and how do we get there, and then we get caught up in getting there. And like my own story was, my mother passed away when she was 55. She had cancer and never got there. Like, she never got to the goal, which was really about me. It was more about me having kids, so she could be a grandmother. But that was my realization at a very early age, was like, we might not be able to get to that, whether it's a $1 billion valuation, wherever it may be, right? Like but what we do have right now is I've got my kids here. I've got family that love me and friends here, that I can hang out with who know me. I've got a vacation or something I'm doing that brings me joy. And it's like, I love that when we opened up with you talking about your kids and what you love about being a father and how it's those little moments that you share with them. And if there's one way to bring yourself back to presence, it's through children or through animals or whatever it may be. We're just going down to the beach, right? Whatever it is for you. Love it, man. So we're going to wrap up now just with one final question. On that bookshelf behind you, or maybe not on that bookshelf, but what's a book that's really made an impact in your life?
It's funny because we asked a similar question on our show, but I actually have never really put a ton of thought into it myself. I have some cliche books that I can mention. Sure. So the two books that got me into entrepreneurship, the ones that led me down the path back in 07-ish was when I read these two books, were The 4-Hour Workweek and Rich Dad Poor Dad. Now, I know on our podcast, those books have probably been mentioned about 30% of the people who come on our show mention those two books. So, I want to try to give something that maybe people haven't heard of as much. And the book that comes to mind that really, really landed well with me was a book called Straight Line Leadership by, I can't even pronounce the name, but it's called Straight Line Leadership, and it's sort of a mental framework for running a business. So if you think of like Stoic philosophy, like this type of stuff that Ryan Holiday puts out, Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy, and books like that, it's kind of similar concepts, but the book is more focused on business and being a good leader. And that book has had a huge, huge impact on me. It's just a whole bunch of reframes of things that happen in your life and your business. And these reframes really make some of the struggles feel like less of struggles.
All right. So the book, the author is Dusan Jukic, I think. We'll link to that in the show notes. But thanks for the recommendation. I'm all about, how do we develop internally as leaders? Because that's, at the end of the day, how you lead determines what kind of results you get. And that's, for those of us a lot of us listening to this will sort of resonate with that idea of where we kind of control what we can control and everything else will happen. So, look, Matt, it's been just a very insightful conversation. It's been amazing to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Is there any final parting words for our audience? And is there anything that we can share with our audience? I know you guys got a ton of resources, but is there anything that you'd like them to be aware of?
Yeah, I actually set up a special link over at hustleandflowchart.com/bean. And what I put on that link is it's actually what we call our Evergreen Traffic Playbook. So what that playbook is, it's a book that's for sale right now on Amazon. But if you go to that link, you can get a free digital copy of it. And basically, on our podcast, we've interviewed like about 300 people now. And out of those 300 people, about 50 of them have been people that are, traffic ninjas, right? They're people that just have amazing traffic strategies. Justin Brook and Mike Rhodes and drawing a blank on a lot of the names.
Dennis Yu. Yep.
Yeah, tons and tons of people that have shared amazing traffic strategies for us. And so what that is a lot of recaps of the traffic strategies that those people have shared with us. We talk about podcasting. We talk about how we grew our podcast. And then that course that you mentioned, our PAG traffic course, there's a breakdown of that strategy as well. So we teach our traffic strategy. We teach how we grew our podcast. And then we sort of curated all of the various traffic strategies that our various guests have shared on our show. And that's all available in that book. And we put that at hustleandflowchart.com/bean.
Love it. We'll definitely link to that in the show notes. Go grab that, guys. A ton of value Matt has dropped today. I want to do a quick shout out to James Stramko and the Superfast Business Podcast. That's how I actually discovered you guys. And I know he's been on your podcast a couple of times. So one day we'll probably see you in Sydney, hopefully, at one of his events.
I think he actually invited us to speak at Superfast Business.
There you go.
So we'll probably be out there. I've never been there, so looking forward to it.
Love it. All right. Well, looking forward to seeing you guys when you are in Oz. Thanks for your time, mate. And all the best for 2020 and narrowing down on your focus.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Want to upgrade your financial skills and learn how to use Xero better? Here's what Emma and Carla of the Merrymaker Sisters shared about their experience with how to do your bookkeeping in Xero course.
We signed up for the financial literacy course with Meryl and B Ninjas because we literally had no idea about the finance section of our business. We kind of were like in this stage where it was like, oh, that's too hard, that's too confronting. We're just going to like bury our heads in the sand and ignore it and keep going with the stuff we're good at, like the marketing or like the design. But finance is important, and now we feel much better. One of the things that we implemented after doing financial literacy training was we started cash flow forecasting, and this changed the business game for us. Why did we not do this sooner? I think the best thing that it has done for us is that it's alleviated all anxiety and all stress around money for the business.
So if you're someone who gets overwhelmed with the idea of going into your Xero file and not really knowing what's going on money-wise with your business, and you just want a simple way to understand Xero and finances for your peace of mind, our How to Do Your Bookkeeping in Xero course might help. Head over to bninjas.com/waitlist to learn more about our course and join the waitlist to receive updates about our next enrollment period. You'll also receive our free 3-part video training series on how to find hidden cash in Xero. That's bninjas.com/waitlist.